Welcome to Human Powered, the podcast about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. I'm Trenton Moss, and today I have Victoria Sugg, CEO at Emperor, the strategic creative comms agency. Victoria, hello.
Hi, Trenton.
So, Victoria, you lead a team of over 300 people across the UK and the UAE. With such a large and decentralized team, how do you define high performing in the business? And what are the key traits of high performers?
I think you can spot a high performer a mile off because attitudinally, they're just different. They're interested and interesting. They tend to be kind of the proactive ones with some, really good attitude. But I think it's the ability to understand the bigger picture, the big strategy, but also hone in on what your team's role in it is and what your individual impact and activity is going to be. If you can do both of those two things, then you will be incredibly high performing.
So what is it that you do to encourage the team to do those things?
So I think if you're really, really clear on that big ambition, first of all, and make sure that everyone knows their role in it, that's incredibly important. But then also hire the right people. Hire people that you see immediately are culturally aligned to your business, because I remember somebody once saying you can teach people most things, but you can't teach them to value something differently to what they inherently do. So when you find it, we call them penguins, we're Emperor. When you find someone who you can see as a penguin, you hire them.
Penguins, which I think is how you refer to members of the team. So Victoria, you said that high performing for you is around people who are proactive, who are interested, who are interesting, who understand the bigger picture and the strategy. How do you nurture that internally? And how do you make sure everyone is really, really good at all those things?
Yeah, so I think you have to excite them with that kind of shared ambition and make sure they really understand it. So our ambition is to be the most relevant, creative and impactful agency in our world for the good of our clients, our partners and society. And the partner piece is because we're employee owned. But it really is about making sure that you say and you explain that ambition over and over again, because people will not get it the first time. They might not even get it the 22nd time. But it's all about comms. We do a big annual town hall. Then we have a drumbeat of a monthly group, what we call huddle, referring to the fact that we're Emperor and we have a lot of penguin vocab going on in our business. I do a weekly CEO note that kind of goes over that again and what's happening. It shouts people out for great behaviour that aligns to that ambition. We use it in creds meetings when people ask us to explain a bit about Emperor. We talk about the client, but in the context of our ambition, what we can do for them. And there's even things like any person who joins the business once a month, I get all those new joiners together and tell them about the history of Emperor, how we've got to where we are today, and reinforce the ambition that we've got and really kind of learn about them ahead of the call to kind of be able to shout them out and say, so you, Jim, in the design team, your part of this will be XYZ, so that everyone feels connected to it. And while it's big and beastie and we're a big business, they really understand individually what it means to them.
So for you, every month you take time out to meet all of the new joiners in the business to tell that same story again about the history and about the ambition.
When I was employed 9 years ago, when I met our now chairman, our then CEO, I was just really taken with the history and the way he explained it to me. The story always starts with two men and an Apple Mac and a microwave. And obviously it's gone from that to, us having these kind of 7 offices being all around the UK and in the Middle East with lots of European clients. This thirst to be ever more relevant has seen us expand that way. But to understand where we're going, you really need to know where we've come from. So I like to tell that history story and then present them with the ambition.
And for you as a busy CEO, that's time really worth spent.
Yeah, it really, really is. We're a people business. And if I wasn't interested in those people, then I would be in the wrong job.
And Victoria, you've got a really interesting career history because you've come up through new biz roles. So given your new business background, tell me a bit more about how that influences the kind of CEO that you are.
Yeah, so I remember when I was approached about this role, the one thing I did think was, oh no, does that mean I won't be able to pitch anymore? Because perversely, I do love that bit. I love often being the first person that a client will meet and kind of representing the business and doing that alchemy where you're trying to work out what they need and whether it's us and all that. So I think that always helps. But all of the CEOs I've worked for 4 CEOs, and they were all growth focused. They all came from the kind of new business sales background. And I think going back to that interesting thing, it's what makes me constantly interested in those clients, both from the business stories that they have, the challenges that they have, but also the individuals and what motivates them and what they need and what they care about. So I think that tends to be how it influences me in the day-to-day as a CEO. That's the bit that I get excited about.
Well, it sounds like you're a real people person in terms of both clients and the team.
Yeah, definitely. We once did one of those occupational psychology tests, and it was very much, are you a dog or a cat? I think I'm definitely a dog and a Labrador at that.
That's brilliant. I love that analogy. You talked a bit about some of the things that you do to keep that ethos of high performing, the annual town hall, the weekly CEO note, the fact that you meet with new joiners every month. Can you tell me a bit more about what are some of the other things that you do to keep an aligned culture around such a large and decentralized team?
Well, so because we're employee owned, there's a real dynamic where we stay connected to our partners and what they are thinking and what they want from the business and for the business. So we have voice sessions every 2 months where there's normally a topic that's explored, whether that be hybrid working or responsible business, and we really take the temperature of everybody. I think that really helps. And then there's also an anonymous voice channel where people can write any question they want, and we'll put it on the internet once a month, answer those questions. So by understanding what's going through their minds at any time, we can make sure that we're answering that and keeping them very much engaged in the trajectory of the business and on board with that. I think that's something unique to employee ownership.
Can you tell me a bit more about these voice sessions?
Well, so I'm not allowed to go, and neither are any of ExCo, deliberately, so that people can really say whatever they like freely. And it's very much Chatham House rules. Obviously, the themes that come out of it are shared with us through our partner board. So we have our partner board, and they are representative of all the different bits of the business. So there's somebody under 30, there's somebody who represents each of our regions, etc. And they ask the questions and take the notes and make sure that the insights and the themes are fed back into ExCo.
Can you tell us a bit more about the partner board, who's in it, why it exists, and what it hopes to achieve?
Yeah, so I don't think all employee-owned businesses have, you don't have to have it, but it is a fundamental kind of governance structure that helps all this work, because they are very good at being ears to the ground to understand what anyone's feeling and take the temperature of the organisation. But also, if there's ever something that's quite complicated to explain or that's quite big that's coming up, we will go and test it out on the partner board, make sure they really understand it, so that if then they hear somebody talking about it in the kitchen, or whether that's in the right way or wrong way, or they're confused about something, they've misunderstood it, they can be very much a kind of backstop between the management and our partners to re-explain something where they might not always want to come and kind of ask one of the ExCo or one of the senior leadership team. I think there are 6 of them now. They have a certain tenure so that keeps getting refreshed, and they represent the different bits of the business so that everybody's perspectives are covered.
I think that's a wonderful idea. Obviously, you're an employee-owned business, but I don't think you need to be employee-owned to do this. Surely any business can do this.
Yeah, I'd agree. And you do hear all the time about shadow boards and reverse mentoring and all that. It's all part of the same world, and it's a brilliant idea, not least because some of the best ideas come from the most unusual places. So I would recommend, even if you're not employee owned, have some mechanism like that in place. So it's not just the best ideas, it can be actually helping with decision making. So for example, during the pandemic, we moved offices. We took our Birmingham and our Bicester office and we put it in Warwick. And we used the partner board to very much test, once we realised that maybe wasn't working so well, what we did next, so that it wasn't a top-down decision. It was asking those people who it would affect what they thought and understanding, different people's priorities, what the right answer would be. The answer was moving to Birmingham. It didn't make everybody happy because different people lived in different places. But the partner board was able to bring people together, listen to everyone, and then get to a consensus on it without it being just top-down mandated. So it's very good in scenarios like that. And also to debate topics like hybrid working, so that people can really talk to each other And peers can talk peer to peer about the fact that they want their colleagues to be in, even if it wasn't mandated. They need it to do their jobs well, to keep learning, to have the best career they can. So it's really good for those kind of scenarios.
And I think the reason you originally set up the Partner Board was because you're an employee-owned business. Tell me a bit more about the benefits of being employee-owned and what behaviour changes that drives across the team.
I think it attracts a more entrepreneurial type of person because they get the best of both worlds. They don't have to have all the risk associated with owning their own business, but they have more input into the trajectory of the business. And also they share in dividends in, years of large profits, which is great. So there's the ownership element, accountability, that's great for many people. As we've talked about, the voice, so really feeling like you've got a say. There's also this added level of transparency, which is incredibly good for many people who don't like to be in a business where they don't know month to month how the business is doing or what's going to happen next. In fact, I'd say we're hyper transparent. Within my CEO note every week, I talk about where the performance is, both in terms of profit and revenue. And then monthly, we talk about our performance and then really outline how people can affect the performance of the business going forward.
So whilst you're a large business, you're very careful to explain what's happening at a high level, and then you always take that down a level to here's how we'd like you to behave and to be in order to be in line with that.
Yes, that's always the plan. We don't always get it right, but it's really important that you do. And also that when you're explaining complicated things about the business, that you try and do it in as simple terms as possible so that everyone can really understand it. And then, as we've just said, understand what it means for their area of the business or their geography of the business, their team, and then themselves as individuals. And then it's really comfortable. Then you can feel really involved. You can feel like you can make an impact rather than kind of lost, as I used to do when I worked for a very big group agency, just lost in the world of it all, not really knowing what you can impact. Everyone wants to do a really good job, but they can't always work out what that is on a day-to-day basis. So if you can do that, then everyone will always know.
And it sounds like your communications are about making sure people understand the finances, understand what's expected of them day to day. And I'm guessing also understanding the longer term goals for the business and therefore what they need to do to help you as a business get there.
Yes, exactly. And then whether it be skills gaps or training or whatever it might be, we have the safety net for people to be really honest about what they're struggling with or areas that they want to explore in the business, like going sideways in their career rather than up, and show them the opportunities that there are that they can take advantage of. So we've had people in account management roles who've been doing really well and have expressed an interest in being a strategist and have moved into that field, which is great. And then they've stayed there. Or we've had people enter in apprentice roles and not quite know where they wanted to go. We've spotted that they could be an art worker and trained them as an art worker, which is just fantastic. So just not supposing immediately that you've got the right box to put the right person in, and give them the choice to be able to explore a career rather than go somewhere else if they're not in the role they want to be in.
And given the size of Emperor, you're in a fortunate position where you can offer people multiple opportunities if the current thing they're doing isn't right for them or if they've outgrown it.
Yeah, and as we've discussed, you can teach people different skills. If they are culturally aligned, a real penguin, a real go-getter, then you want to keep them in the business. You want to see them thrive. And that it can even be kind of geographically. We've got someone who was in London and he went over to Dubai and he's been there. I think he was only meant to be there a couple of months and he's been there a couple of years and he's absolutely brilliant. So to be able to give people different skills, different experiences in different countries, it's fantastic.
One thing I know about the business is that you've recently relaunched your values. Tell me a bit more about why you did this.
So we only had our first set of values in 2020. There were 5 of them and we launched them just as the pandemic hit. So then we went into obviously the crazy 3 years that we all lived through, and we just didn't embed them properly. And in the voice sessions, that was something that came out quite clearly. People said that they didn't fully understand the culture at Emperor. I think everybody, whether you talk to a recruiter or somebody who works here or an alumni, they agree that there's this special thing about Emperor, but we couldn't quite codify it, put our finger on it. So we did these big engagement sessions and worked out what the common brilliant traits that we wanted in people were, and the brilliant traits that existed. And we distilled it into 4 values, and we call it partner spirit, because it very much is that ethos that is here, that is intangible, but it's the traits that are in each one of our partners. And that's aiming higher, find a smarter way, owning it, which obviously is a bit of a play on words of the fact that the partners all own the business, and in it together, which is something that I think if you ask, and we did a video recently for our employee town hall, if you ask people what it is to be emperor, what is unmistakably emperor, the word that comes out all the time is support, which is really great to hear.
Tell me a bit more about how you're not repeating what happened in 2020 and how you're making sure that these are embedded.
We're just at the beginning of this journey, I should say, and it is a bit hairdresser's hair because we do this for other people, so we have to make sure we get it right this time. But we had our employee town hall in June, and there we launched them, and we had the Partner Spirit Awards, and people really got on board. So we had 124 people nominated and 266 votes. And there were a couple of people who got nominated in all 4 categories, which was extraordinary. But now we're kind of going into the science bit. So those values have gone into job descriptions, and in our kind of performance reviews, they will be, people will be measured against those behaviours. We will launch each one individually with some kind of really fun intervention all around the group. And we'll get people to do things like we've got like digital teams and client services teams and design teams. We'll get each to do a little workshop on what each of them means and what they'll stop, start and continue doing as a result. As ever, there'll be all the continual storytelling as we see, real world examples of those values in action. And something that we're really committed to is those little micro recognitions. So when you see somebody living a value, we have a big up box, we call it, and you nominate people, and then monthly in the regional town halls, people get shouted out and rewarded in that way. There was one about finding a smarter way, and it was our amazing new business person in London who, to save budget on an event we did in Edinburgh, did like a charcuterie board and made salami roses and, put artisan market cheeses and things. There's silly things like that. But then there was another smarter way one, something I worked on, where we weren't able to get the font from a client, and that he'd found a really smart way of recreating it. The owning it element. There was somebody who had never run a pitch before, and they ran it from start to finish to the nth degree, every detail, and we won that pitch, and it was just so impressive to see. In it together, there was lots of examples of people where early mornings and late nights, just really supporting their colleagues on a deadline, those moments when someone could have gone home but decided to stay and share the load. Being in an agency, we often have to flex for situations like that.
And what those nominations do is they really bring these values to life for you.
Yeah, exactly. And also reinforce just how right those values are. It was, a test in itself. So it's great to see those flood through. And also the language is so accessible in them now. They're very matter of fact. So you hear people use them in, day to day, like someone will say, like, you better own that. Or come on, we can find a smarter way, or don't worry, we're in it together. In the values that existed before that didn't actually get embedded, aim high was one of them. So we've always been using aim high. It's something that is so emperor, is the ambition of people. It was very noticeable to me when I joined 9 years ago straight away. So that one just gets used a lot.
I think something else that's very emperor is about you being a responsible business. Tell me a bit more about what it is you do around this, and importantly, how does that contribute to business performance?
Yeah, we've always thought the two things are really interlinked, and I've been CEO for 3 years, but this was really from the founders, and it's a red thread through everything that we do. We observe the 5 buckets of B Corp. And that's the framework that we've been using, which has been brilliant. The 5 areas of governance, clients, environment, community and people to focus our activities around. We ask our people what charity that they want to support each year, and then we do activities for it. So last year we climbed up a mountain. 2 years before, we cycled to Amsterdam. But even like when we were thinking about AI, we were very aware of the environmental impact of AI and the ethical impact of AI. So when we were thinking about that within our business, that was front of mind as well. And then there's things like clients. So we have a client resilience committee, which is we're always looking to work with those clients that aren't in the controversial sectors, so that they're clients that we can have a long and fruitful relationship with and our partners feel really proud to work for. But if there is something where either because of behaviour or greenwashing or whatever, someone within Emperor wants to flag a client, they can do to us, and our client resilient committee will do some due diligence and make sure everyone's comfortable with that client. So lots and lots of things that happen that are really just ingrained in the fabric of the day-to-day.
Tell me a bit more about how you think that impacts the business being more high performing.
So it's definitely from the relevance point of view, it's important because it's what our clients are asking for. They often come in and audit us on even, the environmental stuff and the systems and policies and processes that we've got in place. So, it's become quite a hygiene thing, whereas it used to be we went the extra mile. Now, everyone's catching up because they have to, because clients want this level of transparency. Then there's also, if you want people to come and, bring themselves to work as, that trite thing is always said, then you have to make sure that they're comfortable working here and they're proud of what the business does and they feel safe to be here. So that's what adds to the high performing nature of it. There was a stat last year, we asked everybody to disclose any disabilities that they had. And I think it was 89% of our people trusted us enough to put that on our HR system, which I think says a lot.
You mentioned before about AI. Tell me a bit about what you're doing to look after your team in a world where AI is gradually taking over some of their tasks.
Well, so educating them and reassuring them that we're using AI in the right way is really important. And we didn't go it alone. We used a human-centric generative AI consultancy called AI Enigma very deliberately so that we were implementing AI in the right way in our business. And I think we're just always really clear with our teams that this is about enhancing and adding capability and capacity rather than taking things away. It's not a reductive thing that we're trying to do. We're just trying to put wind under everybody's wings and make sure that we stay as relevant as possible for clients. So there's two ways we've done it. One is in going team by team and auditing all the tasks that those teams do to see where there are things that we can be adding to free up people to have more time to have ideas and talk to clients, etc. And then also looking at all the things we do, whether it be, reporting or brand or creative, etc., and thinking about how those different AI tools can enhance and add to what we're offering clients, whether that's, you can now turn an annual report into a podcast in a second, or you can put an AI rover bot on a website to do some kind of FAQs for investors. There's just so many different ways, and it's less about what you do and it's more about what you don't do, because there's just so many choices out there. It's about focusing on what's going to add value to our partners and add value to our clients.
So again, it sounds like you're taking a real human-centered approach to this.
Yeah, deliberately. It's about, as I say, capability and capacity.
So that's definitely a part of your now and your future. Tell me a bit more about the future. What's next for Emperor and what's next for you as CEO?
Well, I think as per the ambition, I want us to be ever more relevant, creative and impactful. It's why we're always exploring new partnerships, new businesses, geographies. We're about radical cooperation because we're independents. The way we're using AI, or the fact that we met an amazing team from Cillian, a sustainability consultancy, and hired kind of 5 of them together. It's why we're always looking outside the UK to see where we might open an office next. And I guess personally, it's the same. All I really care about is meeting interesting people in interesting places so that I can make sure we're doing the best work for clients, giving our people the kind of careers they can't get elsewhere, and ultimately putting that dividend in our team's pockets. So that's what's next, and will always be this kind of restless hunger for something new and next. And what I do find really exciting as well is that I love doing this job. I don't want anyone else to do it for a long time to come, but it was wonderful that when the time came for another CEO, we could look within the business, and that, being employee owned, that could just be the case again. So the next CEO could already be in the walls of Emperor. But as I say, no time soon, please.
Victoria, thank you so much for joining today. It's been so lovely to hear about you and all the wonderful things that you're doing at Emperor.
Thank you so much, Trenton. It's felt very self-indulgent and really lovely.
You've been listening to Human Powered, the podcast all about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. Thanks for tuning in.